Thank you. Thank you. All right. So it is my honor and privilege to be interviewing the one and only Miss Denise Minns Harris, aka Mama Denise. Yes. And we have about 1 hour. And this time I'm going to try to do a better job with time. I have a timer. And we have a few topics to talk about. Uh, and we have a very nice picture showing on the projection. And should we start with that picture? Who is this person?
It's my dad.
Mama Denise, you have to use the microphone.
Almonds. Just a fascinating, multi-dimensional man. He didn't go very far in school because of the time he was growing up and dancing on street corners in Harlem, and we can get into that or not, to make money to help my grandmother. But interestingly enough, he because as a dancer he was traveling the world. So all of my friends in the neighborhood, their dad took a brown bag of lunch to work, went to work Monday through Friday, blah, blah. But when they said, where's your dad? Sometimes he was in Nigeria, sometimes he was in Spain, and Brazil, and he would come home and he would say to me, let me tell you how in those days, let me tell you how the Negro lives in those countries. And he would say things like, never think of yourself as a minority. You are a majority in the world. And so, and he never it is my blessing and my curse to be raised by a man who never accepted the status quo. Whatever the rules were of society, he looked at them, and if it worked, he did it, and if it didn't work for him, it didn't work for him. He married my mother, a Jewish woman, whose family are Holocaust survivors. Here they are trying to rebuild the Jewish nation, and she goes and finds the blackest man dancing Lindy Hop in Harlem. And they got married. It was illegal in more than 30 states in the country. I mean, so I was raised by these two people who were like, question everything, accept nothing just because it's a rule. If it works for you, it worked. If it doesn't, it doesn't. His family were Wash Your Feet Baptists. If you don't know what that is, I can tell you later. But it's fundamentalists in any religion are scary. And so they were fundamentalists, Wash Your Feet Baptists. And, of course, they were not thrilled that he was a dancer at all. So it was him and his mom, Mama Ribi, standing back to back to conquer the world of dance, which he did. And I grew up. On our coffee table were books, 101 Amazing Facts About the American Negro, and Before the Mayflower. And he just really made sure that myself, and I have brothers and sisters, my brother Al, now deceased, my sister Tony, who's painfully shy and could never do this, but she always roots me on, my brother Kevin. So there were 4 of us. And then, as a teenager, my father gifted to the world, and the pastor of the church's daughter, a son named Tommy, who's no longer with us. And so he was just this amazing man. From the time I could walk, when you were a kid of a dancer, from the time you could walk, they put your feet on theirs and you start dancing, and so. A lot of the scene that he did in Hell's a Pop, and I performed with him as a young teen. And so I just grew up in the world of dance, and it has impacted every aspect of my life and my family's life, which we might get more into later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, that was such a good introduction. You're going to make my work easy. Let's see. Can we talk maybe a bit more about like growing up? You are from New York, Yes. So how was it? You talked to touch a little bit of like your family life, but also like the neighborhood life and having your father. Was he some kind of celebrity in the neighborhood as well?
Oh, that's a good one. You know, black folks love to have cookouts. I don't know about anybody else, but I know that's our thing. And so, even though the big clubs like the Savoy and the Alhambra and etc. were no longer gathering places for Lindy dancers, the neighborhood cookouts were, and the neighborhood block parties were. So, so all the moms loved him because he would dance with them, and you know, the fathers would be glaring, and it's not that they couldn't do it, but don't take them out of the basic. So they, do a little basic. With my dad, like he would dance with two or three at a time or whatever. I get this picture of Mr. Johnny every time, like just glaring. So that was really cool. I mean, it left a lot with my dad traveling the way he did. It left a lot on my mom raising us at a time when the civil rights movement was blowing up, and it was very difficult for her because she's a white woman in a black neighborhood. Now I didn't find out she was white till I was like 8 or 9. The subject didn't come up because there's a community in the U.S. called Creoles, and Creoles are very fair skinned. With if you have my mom had curly Jewish hair, so she looked just like the fair skinned black people in our neighborhood. So the subject never came up. So I mean, it just I don't yeah, it just didn't. So I remember I was very excited because it was my first day in the fourth grade, and I'd been placed in the most popular teacher's class. Except when I got there, um, I was like, interestingly, her name is Mrs. Harris. Do you know this story? Oh, so she's wondering where I'm going. I'm sorry. And so
Wherever you want to go.
okay, and so it was first day of school, and my school was segregated. It was only black teachers and black kids, which quite frankly was a very cool thing. But we can talk about that another time. And so I said, "Where's Mrs. Harris?" And so the substitute teacher said, Mrs. Harris had been doing the Freedom bus rides in the South, and white people like Denise's mother put her in jail. I stood up because you said white. I thought paper, crayons, paint. I didn't. It subject, like I said, it never came up. So I jumped up and I ran out of school and I ran home and I was crying, and because my mom, there was nothing evil about her. I mean, she was my mom, and I'm like, and dad was on the road somewhere, and I'm like, this just happened, and she was outraged, and she was this tiny little petite woman, and I'll never forget it. She put on a coat because it was the fall, it was cool, and we went to the school, and she busted into the classroom, and the teacher looked weird, and I swear my mother did this. She walked up to the lady and slapped her and said, "How dare you?" And then we walked into the principal's office, and that teacher never came back to the school again. So it was a very interesting time to be growing up. My mother told me this whole thing about God made flowers, and all the flowers are different, and they're all colors, but we're all whatever. Whatever gets you through the day, Denise. Pick a flower. So, yeah. But she was outraged, and I thought everybody ate lox and bagels on one Sunday and hot links and grits on the next. I mean, I thought everybody sang Hava Nagila. I mean, she was teaching us, but it was never like this is our white Jewish culture. It's just like, want to learn this song? Yeah. Want to do this dance? Let's go. So it was fascinating growing up in New York during the turbulent times that they were, and also but growing up with a man who, because of his life, was giving me a bigger world view than just identifying. When you meet someone from New York, the first thing they say is where you're from. And when a New Yorker identifies themselves, they identify themselves by their block, the block they live on. And that tells you everything. So if I said 129th Street, you knew all about me and what I do and the people I roll out with. So, but he very conscientiously raised us to have a larger worldview of ourselves, and also, in a way, to be troublemakers.
Talking about troublemaker. You talked about the civil rights movement, and it was followed by another movement called the Black Power movement, and an important group that was influential in this movement was the Black Panther Party. And a little birdie told me you were Black Panther.
Yeah, I was in the Black Panther Party. Now, the Black Panthers had a youth division. I was a part of the youth division, and it was interesting. The Black Panthers did some amazing things. Harlem, Columbia University, and their medical school are in Harlem. And so they created a free clinic with those black medical students, doctors and nurses. The Black Panther Party created free health care in Harlem. The Black Panther Party created free breakfast for parents who were working 2 and 3 jobs and couldn't feed their kids or just couldn't afford it. One of the things I did was help detox heroin addicts and turn them into revolutionaries. Because my friends who were using heroin, I convinced them, come clean up your act. But Columbia University was also a big slumlord. And my dad, I mean, I'm sure everybody does it, but with black people, getting an education was the key to winning, to breaking through, to being credible and valid. So my dad and my Jewish mother, no doubt, were really big on education. Well, but then I was hanging out with the Black Panther Party. They thought I was going to school. I was not. I was in the 10th grade, and I was rolling with the Panthers because I was trained to not follow the status quo if I don't like it. So, and Columbia University owned a lot of ghettos, a lot of ghetto buildings, a lot of tenement buildings in Harlem. And there was a time when they didn't repair an elevator in one of the buildings. And as a result, a 5-year-old child fell down through the elevator shaft and died. So we decided that we were going to take this action. We'd been doing all kinds of things, picketing and, just carrying on, trying to get, and even after the kid fell in the elevator shaft and died, they didn't fix the elevator. And, we raised money to bury the child and, help the family while the parents were too messed up in the head to even go to work. But anyway, we decided to do all these different actions. And the party asked me if I would be the youth spokesperson to the press. So now I really didn't have no time for school because I was doing a revolution. And so I'm meeting with the press and I'm having all these conversations and I'm, and I would say, you can't use my name, but you can say a youth spokesperson says. So I'm cutting him out and I'm saying, I wish I had saved him into my adulthood. I didn't, whatever. And so I'm cutting him out and I'm saving him in this book. And then now the day is coming when we're going to take this action. And I was pretty sure I was going to get arrested. And I was pretty sure it was time to tell my dad what I'd been doing. I didn't know what he was going to do. So I took my little scrapbook of all these articles about what's going on, and I shared it with him. And he's like, "Okay, this is really interesting. Why are you showing me this?" I said, "You know that youth spokesperson?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "That's me." And then I kind of went like, I said, "That's me," and I'm probably going to get arrested tomorrow, but I got to do this because everything in me says I got to do this. And my dad said to me, I only wish I was able to do this when I was your age. And if I have to mortgage the house, whatever it takes, you won't spend any time in jail. So he backed me 100%. And but the the Panther Party was getting crazier, for want of a better term. And I was I was sleep. I was my family didn't know, but I was stuffing guns under the mattress. I'm laughing. It's a nervous laugh. Stuffing. I mean, when I think about it now, like how damn crazy was that? I was, storing the guns under the mattresses, and but I began to feel like if I didn't get out of New York, either I was going to be killed or I was going to be forced to use a gun. So at 16, I went out to this university and I convinced them that even though I had 2 more years of high school to complete, they should admit me now. And they did.
Wow.
And it was the most incredible experience of my life. The whole university was only 60 students. The average age was 28. Oof. Many of them were Vietnam War vets, civil rights activists who were like, one of my big mentors had been Dr. King's right hand prior to his assassination. So I was surrounded at 16 years old by these geniuses of move the world forward. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
You are very impressive. So you are also a dancer. Yeah. Yes, on top of things. And so you said you started doing some shows with your father, but then you went into how did you call that style? Was it modern at the time?
Yeah, I loved Lindy. I'm a daddy's girl, right? But I loved dance. Period. So I began to also study modern and Dunham and African. And he's funny because he has a interview on YouTube where he's like slamming people. Yes, they do the modern, and I know he's slamming on me.
It was you.
It was me because I came home one day, with ski leggings on all the way up my thigh. I would wear these heavy ski leggings to keep my muscles warm, and then like I'm watching TV and I'm stretching and doing what dancers do. And he's like, "What are those things on your legs?" I said, "They're leg warmers to keep my muscles warm. If you need your muscles warm, why don't you just get up and dance?" Yeah, he got a kick out of himself. I just rolled my eyes but I also taught dance, jazz and African at the State University of New York for 3 years as well.
All right. And when did you move to California, or did you go to Texas first?
No, California. I decided in New York, it is such a bottleneck to try to break into the industry. And very, very difficult. All who you know, blah, 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 very difficult. And so everyone was talking about how Broadway is getting ready to bust wide open in LA. It's a good time to get in there and get in on the ground floor, blah, blah, blah. So, I picked up my jazz shoes and I moved to LA. And I hadn't planned on staying. But I met this guy. Married him 2 weeks after we met, 43 years ago. We're still married. And and he totally supported my artistry and my pursuit. But mm, I felt me being pulled in another direction, and so I began learning the art of advocacy for organizations that are out there making change. It's like I do this. This is for my soul. This dance feeds my soul. I I can't survive without it. I'm sure y'all feel the same way. But I also can't ignore what's happening in the world. So I do fundraising for progressive organizations. Last week, I just signed the Obama Foundation as my client.
Woo.
Um, I
Wow.
yeah yeah, and I also represent. I do fundraising for Greenpeace. Um, I was one of the principal fundraisers for the Joe Biden presidential campaign. Uh, yeah, I do. I do a lot of. I yeah, so I do a lot of. I do a lot of fundraising for progressive nonprofits. There is no major civil rights organization in the country that's not my client. I raise money for the NAACP, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the DNC, Democratic National Committee, is also one of my clients. And so, what I like about it is it allows me to put a print on everything that matters to me, um, and 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 my kids are the same way. Poor things.
So, when I was riding the limo service coming here, and it was woods and more woods and still woods, and then at one point I just imagined like your father or Mr. Manning coming here for the first time and just seeing woods and more woods and still woods. And me like, that must have been a little bit frightening.
Ah,
Like in a way, I'm like, where am I going in the woods? Ooh, that
city
doesn't
boy.
go well in the movies.
Yeah,
And when you're the first time your father was coming
yeah.
here, I think there's a little story there, no?
Well, what happened was my my second son, Kevin, who some of you know. Kevin was just a couple of months old, and my dad called me and told me the story about how Count Basie had been in town, and he was hanging out down there where the band was playing, dancing and having a good time, and these three big Swedes. He later found out they were Swedes. Everywhere he danced in the room, they followed him and just kind of folded their arms and were watching him dancing. So he doesn't understand what the hell. So finally he said, "What the hell? What do you want?" And they're like, "Al Minns, we came to New York looking for you, and we went." And he was teaching at the time. He was teaching at the Sondrick Cameron Studios downtown New York, which is where they went initially. And the students were really struggling because he was like, "Don't count. We don't count. We dance." Da da da. But anyway, so Leonard asked him if he would come spend a month in Sweden and help create this vision called Herräng. So my dad came, and when he came home, he told me, "This is where I'm going to be staying. If I'm not home in a month, come get me." He said, we didn't have Google in those days. He couldn't look up, was it real or are these some crazy white boys getting ready to steal him, sell him to Mexico to teach dance? Who knows? But anyway, when he came home, he was ecstatic. because he had had such a life of dance and excitement and joy, and it was disintegrating because of the closing of the great ballrooms. The big bands had to go where they were making money, and they wasn't making money, in Harlem anymore. Not much, not often. And so I remember he called me, and he was ecstatic that he saw this dance form, this art that he had devoted himself to. And by the way, I want to say, my father never called himself a Lindy Hop dancer. He called himself a jazz dancer, and Lindy Hop was one of the things he did. And I'm so sorry, I meant to bring it because I have a program that had like 17 different dance styles that he performed in a particular show. You know, some of it he did with Sugar, who was his last dance partner, if you didn't know. But when he came back from Sweden, he was so happy, and he was talking about this great future of the dance form and how it's spreading, because he was in World War II and he danced all over Europe because that's what they had him do, and Norma Miller, I once spoke with her, and she said, she said to me, I owe your father such a debt of gratitude, because if it wasn't for him, none of us would be here doing what we're doing today. They were struggling too, like how to keep it alive, and so I honor him that he gave that gift to the people of his era to continue to teach and perpetuate this great art. But anyway, he said, but my throat's been hurting. I said, your throat's hurting? I said, because my dad was kind of wild in the streets. I didn't know what he'd gotten into out here. So I said, you better go to the doctor and get yourself checked out. And he was diagnosed with esophageal cancer and died not long after. But I have to tell you, there is no sadness about that, because if he had a mission, if he had a mission, he faced his death knowing he had fulfilled what he was on this earth to do. And there's no sadness in that, and he gave a great gift to the people of his era that they could continue to perpetuate it and to the world. And so that's the only reason why I'm here, to honor his legacy. I make enough money. you know. This is my friend.
I'm happy to be your friend. And okay, that was my last question. Well, no, I'm lying. I have two more. The first one is like, okay, so your father was a dancer and you are a dancer, but it seems like that's not where it stopped. And I saw Carrie last time at ISDC tearing it up on the dance floor. So we know that your grandson is also gonna be amazing. But in between, there's a couple more, right?
Yeah, so like I said, the minute when you're a kid of a dancer, the minute they can walk, you're dancing with them. I did the same thing with my kids, and so I have three sons. My firstborn, Jason plays a phenomenal jazz saxophone, and he danced, but medicine and the sciences took over as his passion. So he got his bachelor's degree, and then he got a master's in biochemistry. Then he did 3 years in med school and said, I don't want to do this. And so now, I don't know how many of you have heard of Compton. I mean, everybody knows about Compton because everybody knows about, Tupac. So he's now director of creating science programs for the school system in Compton.
Wow.
And then and he's very excited that he's turning young black underprivileged kids, getting them excited about science in the 21st century. And then my middle son, Kevin is a dancer. Kevin and Wayne, who I'm also going to talk about, they I gave them to Debbie Allen. I was director of Debbie Allen's studio for about the first 15 years. So they're thoroughly
Casually throwing that.
so they're thoroughly trained in ballet, jazz, tap, Vaganova ballet, which is Russian. Ballet, jazz, tap, hip hop, African flamenco, and Cirque du Soleil aerial. And so Kevin has, won international awards for choreography as well as dancing, national and international. And he has his own studio in Texas, and he got sick of dealing with the parents, so he closed the studio. But he continues to teach master classes all over the country. And then my youngest is Wayne. Wayne even had a scholarship and trained a scholarship to the summer intensive of the Bolshoi Ballet. And he was in a Broadway show called The Prom. It had 7 Tony nominations. And he just got accepted into the graduate program at Yale University.
Woof.
So my boys are good. It's funny because when I say it, it's like, well, damn. Because we laugh because in our family it's always, what's next? It's never about, and it's his fault. It's always like, what's next? What's next? Okay, what's next? And Kevin's married. He has a son named Kari.
So cute.
Kari had his first tap recital at 2.
Do you have video?
He's a
I've
studio
seen
brat
it.
because he grew up in the studio with his father teaching every day. So he's hyper focused, and at 2 he was out dancing the 5-year-olds. I'm like, that's right, that's right, that's what he's supposed to do. And Kevin's wife Tia is an amazing dancer as well. They're expecting a daughter in October, so the family curse is changing. We're having some girls, and that'll be fun. And that's it for me on that question.
All right. So before we open up, I have one final question. And it is, what is your vision for our modern, current Lindy Hop scene?
So, I have to tell you, it's both of my sons, in spite of all their training, their greatest love is hip hop, and they're phenomenal hip hop dancers and choreographers. And it feels like a straight line because Lindy began as street dancing. It wasn't in the studios. So the first thing I did when they learned I existed, they meaning the organizers of Lindy events, first thing I did was I went to all of them and said, do you understand if black kids had to pay to come here, you never would have had my father's genius? That you've made this art inaccessible to the very people who created it. So I talk about that a lot. And I feel that it's become very studio. It's become very studio. It's fun, but you look at Hell's a Poppin', the kind of raw energy and passion and creativity that demonstrates, and you look at how it's become so Arthur Murray'd, because Arthur Murray saw it. He's like, oh, wait, there's some money here. Mm-hmm. Let me start teaching this. And then he gave it counts, which is sacrilegious. Am I right, Barbara and Susan? Okay. He gave it counts. He watered it down. I'm not against people mixing genres, but I'm telling you, I'm now judging, and I'm watching couples who, I'm like, now, is that ballet or Lindy? What the hell are we doing here? It's become so pretty. very pretty, very cute. But I want to see. When I was dancing, we used to say, "Girl, you peed on the floor." I want to see that. I want to see that. I want to see. I've done dance concerts. When I finished dancing, I couldn't talk because I was in such a place. I blew my own damn mind. I want you to dance like you're blowing your own mind. Stop being pretty. Who gives a shit? Norma, pretty, really? No, but she peed on the floor every time she got on it. Every time. My father, come on. He didn't care. So my vision is to see the hip hop spirit in the Lindy Hop dance, the creativity, the improvisation. So that's what Barbara meant when she said, "Learn from me, but don't do me." Where's your improvisation on your foundation? You understand what I'm saying? It's so lazy. You guys do good YouTube. And I love you for being here. I told Marie when I saw how many people came in here, I'm always stunned, and I told you, I said, I'm humbled by the people who even want to hear anything, at all about the history of this dance, and my dad, who, I got lucky when I got him. And he wasn't easy. We went to war. Because I questioned his status quo just like he questioned mine, But it didn't matter because at the end of the day, that was my guy, and he dug me. But I want to encourage you. I once went to I spoke somewhere, and this person said that they had taken class, Camp Hollywood. This person had taken class, and then they did something with a partner who'd been in that class, but they did a little improv on top of it, and the person got mad. I'm like, good. That's not the way we learned it in class. Right? 1, 2, 3. Jesus Christ, get out of it. Trust yourselves. Be willing to look foolish. Make mistakes, because they're not mistakes. If you ever heard my father talk about where a lot of the aerials came from, they were mistakes. And then they'd say, wait, let's work with that. It was, what an exciting time to be at the foundation of the creation of that art, where there were no rules. No one cared if you bent your knees or bent your back. It has become so codified that you're killing it. I'm just going to tell you to your face. You're killing it. Grow a pair of balls and take some risks. Okay, I said too much.
The floor is now open for questions. I'm nothing to say, y'all. You cannot say anything after this.